In the year 208 AD, China stood on the edge of total domination. One man, one army, was about to take control of everything. His name was Cao Cao, a brilliant strategist, a powerful warlord, and a man feared across the land. With an army of over 200,000 soldiers, he marched south. His goal was simple: unite all of China under his rule and destroy anyone who stood in his way. But in the south, two unlikely forces were preparing to resist. Two leaders who knew they could not win alone. Liu Bei, a man of honor, fighting to restore the Han dynasty, and Quan, a young ruler determined to protect his land. Alone, they were weak. Together, they had a chance. What followed was not just a battle. It was a turning point in history, a battle that would decide the fate of China forever. Before the battle began, one man had already changed the balance of power: Cao Cao. He was not just a warrior. He was a master strategist, ruthless when needed, but always thinking ahead. During a time of chaos known as the late Han dynasty, China was divided. Warlords fought for power. The empire was collapsing. But Cao Cao saw opportunity. He built his strength step by step, defeating rivals, capturing territories, and expanding his influence. Soon, he controlled the north of China. His army grew massive, his reputation even bigger. Some saw him as a hero, a man bringing order to chaos. Others feared him as a ruthless conqueror. But one thing was certain: he was unstoppable. Now, with the north under his control, he turned his attention to the south, the final step in his plan to unite China. But he was about to face something unexpected. Not just resistance, but a strategy that would change everything. As Cao Cao marched south with his massive army, fear began to spread across the land. No one believed he could be stopped. His forces were too large, his victories too many. For Liu Bei, the situation was desperate. He had already lost battles. His army was weak. His people were exhausted. Running from one place to another, he was barely surviving. On the other side, Quan faced a difficult decision. He ruled the southern lands. He had a strong navy and a well-defended territory. But against Cao Cao's massive force, even he was uncertain. Should he surrender and accept Cao Cao's rule? Or should he fight and risk everything? His advisors were divided. Some urged him to surrender. Others demanded war. But one man would change everything. A brilliant strategist named Zhuge Liang. Known for his intelligence and calm thinking, he believed that Cao Cao could be defeated, but only if the South united. Zhuge Liang traveled to meet Quan, not as a soldier, but as a negotiator. In a tense and critical meeting, he spoke with confidence. He explained Cao Cao's weaknesses. His army was large, but not experienced in naval warfare. His soldiers were tired from long campaigns, and the southern rivers were unfamiliar to them. Zhuge Liang made one thing clear: if we fight together, we can win. After a long silence, Quan made his decision. He would not surrender, he would fight. And with that, an unlikely alliance was formed: Liu Bei and Quan. Two leaders with different goals, now united against a common enemy. It was a risky move, but it was their only chance, because ahead of them was a battle that would decide the future of China. As the alliance between Liu Bei and Quan was formed, the real challenge began. They were about to face the most powerful army in China, led by Cao Cao. But this was not just a battle of strength, it was a battle of strategy. And the key to victory would not be numbers, it would be intelligence. The Allied forces gathered near the Yangtze River, at a place that would soon become legendary: the Red Cliffs. Here, they prepared for war. But there was a problem. Cao Cao's army was massive. Thousands of soldiers, hundreds of warships, all moving south like an unstoppable force. But despite his strength, Cao Cao had one weakness. His army was not trained for naval warfare. Most of his soldiers came from the north. They were not used to fighting on water. The constant movement of ships made them sick, unstable, uncomfortable, and this weakness would soon be exploited. The mastermind behind this plan was Zhuge Liang, alongside Quan's brilliant commander Zhou. Together, they began to design a strategy, one that would turn the tide of the entire war. Instead of attacking head-on, they would use deception. They would use the environment, and most importantly, they would use fire. But for this plan to work, everything had to be perfect. The wind had to be right. The timing had to be precise. One mistake, and everything would be lost. Meanwhile, Cao Cao believed victory was certain. To stabilize his ships, he ordered them to be chained together, so his soldiers could stand firmly and fight without fear of falling. But this decision, meant to strengthen his army, would become his greatest mistake, because now his entire fleet was connected, and if one ship burned, all would burn. The stage was set, the armies were ready, and a single spark was about to change history forever. The night was calm, the river was silent, and the wind was finally blowing in the right direction. For Zhuge Liang and Zhou, this was the moment they had been waiting for. Everything was ready. The plan was simple, but deadly. They prepared a group of ships filled with dry wood, oil, and flammable materials. These were not warships, they were weapons, floating fire. A trusted officer, pretending to surrender to Cao Cao, led these ships toward the enemy fleet. From a distance, everything looked normal. Cao Cao's soldiers saw the ships approaching and believed they were receiving reinforcements. They had no idea what was coming. As the ships moved closer, the tension grew. The wind picked up, the river currents aligned perfectly, and then, at the exact moment, the order was given. Fire. Flames erupted instantly. The ships turned into blazing infernos, rushing straight toward Cao Cao's fleet. Within seconds, they crashed into the enemy ships. And because Cao Cao had chained his ships together, the fire spread uncontrollably, from one ship to another and another, until the entire fleet was burning. The night sky lit up with flames. Smoke filled the air. Soldiers panicked. Chaos erupted. What was once a powerful navy became a burning disaster. Screams echoed across the river. Men jumped into the water. Ships collapsed into flames. The unstoppable army was now helpless. In that moment, the balance of power changed forever. As the fire consumed the fleet, the Allied forces launched their attack. Warships charged forward, arrows rained down, and the once mighty army of Cao Cao began to collapse. Confusion spread. Command broke down. There was no control, no formation, only chaos. Cao Cao watched as his massive force fell apart before his eyes. The fire had destroyed his navy, and without it, his campaign was over. He had no choice. He ordered a retreat, but even retreat was not easy. As his army fled north, they faced new challenges. Heavy rains turned the land into mud. Soldiers struggled to move. Many were lost along the way. The defeat was complete. The man who had almost united China had been stopped, not by strength, but by strategy. The Battle of Red Cliffs was over, but its impact had just begun. After the flames of Red Cliffs faded, China was no longer the same. The defeat of Cao Cao had stopped his dream of uniting the entire land. For the first time, his power had been broken. But victory did not bring unity. It brought division. In the north, Cao Cao still held control. Despite his defeat, he remained a powerful force. In the west, Liu Bei began to build his own kingdom. He gained land, followers, and strength, and in the south, Quan secured his rule. His navy, his territory, and his victory at Red Cliffs made him a dominant leader. China was now divided into three powerful regions, three rulers, three ambitions. This division would soon lead to a new era, known as the Three Kingdoms period, a time of war, strategy, and legendary battles. Red Cliffs had not ended the conflict. It had only changed its direction. The Battle of Red Cliffs was more than just a victory. It was a turning point, a moment where strategy defeated strength, where intelligence overcame numbers, and where history took a different path. If Cao Cao had won, China might have been united under one ruler, but instead, the land remained divided. And from that division, some of the greatest stories in Chinese history were born. The legends of heroes, strategists, and warriors. The battle also proved something important, that even the strongest army can fall if it underestimates its enemy, if it ignores its weaknesses, and if it faces a mind that thinks differently. The brilliance of Zhuge Liang, the leadership of Zhou, and the alliance between Liu Bei and Quan changed the fate of an entire civilization. Even today, over 1,800 years later, the story of Red Cliffs is remembered, not just as a battle, but as a masterpiece of strategy, a reminder that in history, victory does not always belong to the strongest. Sometimes it belongs to the smartest.